Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are cooking up some smoked ribs and some pulled pork along with some other delights. So to kick us off, we are going to be smoking these ribs. As you can see, got a nice apple cider spritz to help keep the moisture throughout the cookout process. Now I like to cook my ribs at 225 for about 5 hours, and then the pulled pork I like to cook that about 7 to 8 hours depending on the weight and the size, but it usually goes pretty fast once you do wrap it. So stay tuned and I'll show you that step process as well. Alright, for our first side dish, we got the southern favorite, making some good old cornbread. As you can see, we got some cornmeal, we got some all-purpose flour. I like to use unbleached flour personally, and then we're gonna have some baking powder as well as some sugar and a little bit of salt we're going to add to it. Now it's very important to make sure we mix this nice and well so we have a nice consistent batter once we get the cornmeal and bread ready to go. So as you can see here, we're just mixing it up nice and easy. You want to be careful because you don't want to overwork the dough. You don't want to develop any type of gluten, as that's going to make your cornbread come out very tough and very unpleasant, and I'm sure your guests won't be very happy with that at all. So the next step, we have our eggs. As you can see, we have 3 eggs, and then we're gonna blend this in a step process. So we're gonna blend the eggs first, make sure it's nice and emulsified together. Then we are gonna add our buttermilk next to this mix before we add the butter, the melted butter we have there to the side. And like I said, it's gonna mix it nice and blend it together so there's a smooth, consistent batter. And then we're gonna add it all together to the dry mix. As you can see, now I feel like I need a little bit bigger bowl, but that is okay. We're gonna make it work because hey, I'm a professional over here. So make sure this batter is nice mixed together. Alright, and now for a pro tip. As you can see, we have this blazing hot cast iron. So what I like to do is you want to put the cast iron in a 500-degree oven and let it get smoking hot. And then once it is smoking hot, that's when you want to add the batter to it. So you can let that cast iron get hot as you're making the batter. About time you're done, it should be pretty smoking hot for you. And we're going to level it out a little bit, as you can see. And that way when you cook it, you get a nice crispy bottom and you get a nice soft golden crust on the top, and that's going to be nice and soft throughout the cornbread as well. So you can see this mixture here is just a very simple honey butter mix. You take your honey, you take your butter, you melt it all together, you can get this nice beautiful glaze on top. Don't worry, I have these recipe for this cornbread in the comments there in the description, so you can repeat as well. Alright, so next we are moving on to creating a barbecue sauce. This is going to be a ketchup based Texas style barbecue. So you see here we have a little bit of lard, a little bit of butter, as well as I roasted some garlic off as well. So just one garlic head, cut the tips off and just roast it for about 15-20 minutes in some olive oil, as well as some charred onion as well. And then next we're gonna let that stew in a pot along with your spice mix there. Just a little custom barbecue spice mix I created. You're gonna sweat those onions off a little bit and then also sweat off those spices. And then next we're just gonna add our cans of tomato sauce. So for this recipe I did end up using 2 cans of tomato sauce. Should give you a nice yield amount. Any leftover you can also put it in the freezer, that way you can pull it out when you're ready to use it. And then we're going to add a little bit of molasses in it as well to give it that dark color, as well as give it another body of character for the barbecue sauce. And it's going to let this cook. We're going to put it on back on the smoker and actually let it cook for a good 45 minutes to an hour. Right, next, moving on to our next side dish, we're gonna be making some barbecue beans. So right here I'm just cutting up a couple of links as well as some chopped onions, a little bit of touch of garlic. Now for the beans in particular, I did already make these in advance. I had some left over for a couple weeks ago that I had in the freezer. But like I said, you can use, canned beans. You can make fresh beans from scratch. A little pro tip I like to do personally is I buy a bag of just raw beans. I just cook them in a large batch, and then I put them in little cryo bags, and then just put them in the freezer, and that way I can pull them as needed. That way you can have like a mass production of those beans to pretty much turn into anything you want to be. So next I'm gonna put all the links and the onions and garlic in the pan, sweat those off with a little bit of salt to help break them down. And then next we're gonna add the baked beans that I had already cooked before and get them nice and heated up, and we're gonna start to develop that layers of flavor with the barbecue beans next. Alright, so as our beans are cooking off to the side, simmering away, we're gonna take a look at our ribs, just pull them off the smoker. As you can see, they have a beautiful mahogany color. We're basically gonna put a little apple cider spritz on there. What you want to do is to make sure you do spritz your butcher paper to make it pliable, as well as put some spritz on the ribs as well. That way it's gonna make it a lot easier for you to fold and wrap the ribs, because if you don't, you're gonna struggle a little bit and try to get that wrap. So on the bottom there, I have a little bit of tallow I had left over. Just put that on the bottom with the bone side up, and then we're just gonna do a very simple trifold method here. So we're gonna tuck underneath, and then we're gonna fold both the right and left inwards, and then we're just gonna wrap it up and continue folding and keep the tuck nice and tight. This is gonna help prevent moisture from leaking out and help keep our ribs nice and juicy, as well as get them really tender. This technique that a lot of people use to finish off the ribs once you get that color you want, and it's gonna really help steam them as they smoke in the smoker as well. So a really cool technique, very simple. Just make sure to wrap it nice and tight, and want to make sure to spritz the paper so that it's very pliable, it doesn't tear as you are wrapping your ribs. Right, and next we're moving on to our pulled pork. I'm gonna use the same type of method, except for this one, you see I have the full pan there to the side with a little bit of water in it. So we're gonna wrap this up like we did the ribs, but the reason why you want to have that full pan there to put the pulled pork in is because you're gonna get a lot of fat that's gonna render from that pulled pork, and that is the goodness that you don't want to lose, especially with a type of meat like this, because that's gonna help maintain the moisture, and there's just a lot of good flavor dripping off that meat. So we're gonna make sure you put that in that full pan, and because we're gonna save those drippings once the pulled pork is done to use to mix in with the pork. And as you can see here, that's that finished barbecue sauce, looking nice and vibrant and tasty and ready to eat. So now that our ribs are pretty much done at this point, so it's been about 5 hours, so they are nice and tender, ready to eat. But what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna put a layer of that barbecue sauce that just finished as well. And what we're gonna do is gonna put these ribs back on the smoker for just about 15, maybe 20 minutes, just so we can have that barbecue sauce settle on the ribs itself. So it's gonna give us a nice little bite there. You get that richness of that sauce on that bark, and then you also get the meaty and the juiciness from those ribs as well. So it's gonna give you a really nice finish and a really nice bite, as they are gonna be falling off the bone at this point. So now that the ribs are done, the bark has been set, the sauce has been set on the ribs. So I did end up letting these rest for about an hour or two before I cut into it. So I have my family starting to arrive. So now we're gonna start cutting these ribs into portion sizes. And like I said, as you can see, the ribs are extremely tender. Personally, that's how I like my ribs, very tender. I know some people have their own preference. Some may like that bite to it as well, but for me, I like it melt in your mouth, fall off the bone. you pick the bone up and it just slides right off. That's how I like it. So we're gonna just chop these up, get these prepped and ready for the family. And I'm sure everyone's mouth is watering, because I know as I was cutting these bad boys, I had to take a couple sample bites, you know, just to make sure the quality control is good, of course. All right, and on to our pulled pork. This is ready to go. It's been about, I would say, seven and a half hours, I would say. Because like I said, once you do wrap that pulled pork up and put it back on the smoker, it's gonna cut that cook time pretty quick for you. So like I said, it would depend on the weight of your pork butt overall, but expect it to cook very quickly. As you can see, nice and tender. I mean, no meat on that bone at all. A clean pull from the meat. So we're gonna take that residual drippings that we had from the smoker in that pan, and we're just gonna toss this in with this pulled pork, and then I'm gonna start just kind of mixing it up, not too fine, just like a nice little rough, you know, kind of a pulled texture, because I like my pulled pork to have some meaty bits on it as well. It gives a nice real bite through, and it has a really nice textural feel as well. So really good stuff here. And moving on, we have our finished product here. You see what we got there. We got a couple of chicken wings and some sausage I did as well, along with some steak, and then we got that pulled pork mixed in with some of that barbecue sauce, as well as those beautiful ribs there. And then we also have our beans that are finished, and that cornbread I think you guys are gonna really love and enjoy. So see you guys in the next video. Talk to you soon.